हरः पैपीयमानं मुदा भूयात्कारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि नः श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वैदैः साङ्गप्रदक्रमोपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो
ॐ नारायणः परो व्यक्तात् अण्डमव्ययसम्भवम् अण्डस्यान्तस्त्विमे लोकाः सप्तद्वीपा च मेदिनी ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 Looking at the text here. 11th verse, which we have a lot to talk about. Straight away, Arjuna is told that there is no cause for grief. That whenever there is a feeling of sorrow, and that sorrow is always centered on aham, I. So whenever there is a feeling of sorrow and that sorrow is centered on aham, the place internally where the I is cognized, namely buddhi, the faculty of the intellect, the mind, buddhi, however you want to refer to it. That is where the sorrow is recognized. So in saying, and there is a big discussion on this in certain other commentaries, that there are two objections. First of all, the first objection that can come to Bhagavan saying that you are grieving over something that should not be grieved. You can even object to Bhagavan. Yes, that is how we have got by all our lives, objecting to everything that Bhagavan does. So we can continue to objecting not only to what Bhagavan does, but to what Bhagavan says by way of Upadesha. Even that can be parsed and discussed and all. ठीक है, वो भी ठीक है, no problem. So then, so the first objection that can come is that this is no way to deal with a grieving person. A grieving person must be dealt with kid gloves, meaning all soft, soft, because the grieving person is already sad. So you are talking to an already sad person, and then here Lord Krishna says you are grieving over that which does not deserve grief. This is no way to console. How can you do this? Poor Arjuna. I mean, all our hearts go to Arjuna. Okay. Why? A simple reason. He is suffering from delusion and the grief is a byproduct. an offspring of delusion. And so, therefore, since the delusion is rampant in the world already, and that delusion comes out of Atma Ajnanam, as we have seen in the introduction, so then there are, Arjuna has many, many, many sympathizers, many likes on Facebook, and if he had a Facebook account, Arjuna Vishada, it would be called Arjuna's Sorrow Facebook account. It will have to be a public account, and there will be many, many likes. And if Bhagavan had a Facebook account, and then, they will be like, how could you do this? You should not do this. I'm going to unfriend you on Facebook. People will say, people will tell Bhagavan. And so like this, this is some kind of a kind of a collective outrage that happens when somebody who is sad is told to not be sad. Okay, if you're not sad, see, this is a very kind of interesting catch-22. Vedanta is full of them, okay? So if you're not sad, then there is no use to tell you, don't be sad, because you're not sad. Okay, now, taking the other paksha, the side of the person who is sad. If the person is already sad, what good is it going to do to tell them not to be sad? Are they going to listen to you and oblige and, dry up their tears and wring out their hanky and put it out to dry? No, they will not. The sad continues to be the sad, and the not sad is not sad anyway. And so what is the point of this kind of an upadesha, a teaching that says, oh, don't be sad? Well, that's why we have to take a deeper look at what this upadesha actually is. And if we look deeply, we see that Arjuna is not being told not to be sad. Lord Krishna is not saying, don't be sad. Even though we read that Ashocyan Anvashochastvam in that particular way, we say, because, but the exact translation of the verse is, O Arjuna, you talk like a pandit, but you are grieving over that which does not deserve grief. Meaning, you are sad, all right, it is a fact. And sadness is valid because it has come here. It is here. And that's why we are talking about it, because it is valid. It's valid as an emotion. So that's why we are sitting here talking about it, O Arjuna. But this sadness is not warranted. And this is a fact. This sadness is not warranted for this particular situation. And what is this particular situation? The situation of death. Why death? Because that's the ultimate kind of sorrow. Everything, there is a sorrow comes from viyoga, separation. When one is separated from an object that one loves, be that object, maybe that object is a piece of chocolate cake which you are really wanting to have, but then somebody comes, your dear friend comes and says, oh, chocolate cake, can I have some? Oh, and then your heart just melts, and then you say, here, have the whole thing is for you, enjoy. And of course, you are also drooling alongside, and you're getting some kind of a vicarious, enjoyment, because you really happen to love this person. But there is a little bit of a wistful thing. Why me? Why this happens all the time to me? So viyoga is the opposite of samyoga. Samyoga coming together, viyoga splitting apart. Separation is called viyoga. So then what happens? So there is a sorrow. And then we can only extrapolate, instead of the chocolate cake, a person that you love, separation from a person, like a breakup, no longer friends, or the friend has moved into a different, space in their lives. Either in terms of spiritual growth, they are not at the same wavelength anymore, and you don't even need to let them go, they just drop off. the more that you get interested in Bhagavad Gita, etc., things that do not serve you, people that do not serve you, drop off. Now, that is not the reason for you to drop off from the Bhagavad Gita class, okay? Why? Because you'll make new friends. Yeah, you'll make new friends who are more in touch with who you are now. But still, when that old ways, dysfunctional ways of being goes away, and the person with whom you are reproducing these old ways of being also goes away, there is sorrow. But no greater. The sorrow is the greatest when the separation is final. When there is a terminal separation caused by death, the sorrow, of course, is the greatest. So that is why the example of battlefield, killing, death are used. And in the same vein, Bhagavan Krishna's first teaching to Arjuna, first of many, 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 many verses, says that you are grieving over that which does not deserve grief. And it is a matter of fact. It's a fact. It's not something, it's not intended to console. It is intended to teach, as we have pointed out, and it's a simple fact. Why? Because the grief is over, you are grieving. And Lord Krishna is very perceptive here. He says you are grieving over two kinds of things. Gatasavaha. So the people who are dead. People who are dead, you are grieving. And then people whose imminent death that you visualize, you are grieving over that. Only those two things. Because you keep talking about how can I kill my own people and all these things. And then you say, Tyakta Jivitaha. Madarthe Tyakta Jivitaha. For my sake they have given up their lives, O Krishna. They haven't given up their lives. Poor things, they are standing on the battlefield, but in his mind they are already dead. As good as dead, because the battle is going to be full of bloodshed and all kinds of, horrors are going to be wreaked. And so therefore what? So therefore, these are the two kinds of things that supposedly on the worldly level of human affairs warrant sorrow. But Lord Krishna corrects him and says the sorrow is unwarranted. Why? Let us take both of these scenarios. In case of a living person, let's say a sick person in the hospital, and then you are sad, okay, because you don't know the outcome, you don't know when they will get well, and even after they get well, you don't know, let's say in case of a stroke or something, you don't know what kind of faculties are lost and what kind of faculties will come back with rehabilitation and physiotherapy, you don't know. And so therefore when you go visit them, what do? You start weeping. No, that is the time you should not start weeping, because you're supposed to give them some kind of a moral boost. They are looking to you. They are, all the people in difficult situations who are admitted to the hospital, etc. They are scanning the faces of their loved ones to see what they see. And if the person is already like a wet rag going into the hospital room and causing a flash flood there on the hospital floor, this is not going to be. In fact, that person is going to give up faster, because the mind and the body are after all connected. So if the mind gives up, the body follows suit. So in case of the living, there is no sorrow warranted, even if somebody is sick. And you tell them you're going to be okay, it's all right, you're going to pull through, everything is fine, you do that. You give them, moral support. And then on the other side, when we are talking of death and the passing away of somebody, then what happens? Then also, here is where we have to have a little more, what should I say, we should grow up here to understand this, emotionally grow up. Then also there is no cause for sorrow. Why? Because crying is not going to bring the person back. Crying is important. That doesn't mean that the crying doesn't have a function. It has the function of expressing. Crying has a function. Definitely. There is pain and that needs to be expressed, and that's okay. But the sorrow with reference to that which is gone is is not, is not valid. It's not warranted. And why is it not warranted? Simply because it is not having any function on the level of bringing them back. So a person that is bereft will be very, very upset, very, very sad, inconsolably so, so it would seem. But life does go on for the living. The viyoga, the sad fact of the separation has happened. But the person who has survived the separation, what do? They pick up the pieces. They get on with their lives. Yes, the sadness is there, but that sadness is what is being inquired into here. There is a heaviness. People feel this. They touch the heart. I feel the heaviness here. Here is the pain. It feels like I'm carrying some lead. People say this. That heaviness is being interrogated here. Its origins and the cause why it is there. The question that we that we need to ask ourselves is the following. This sorrow that sits heavily in the heart, is it intrinsic to the I? This is a very important question. Is the sorrow intrinsic to the I, or, the second question you can guess, or is it outside or extrinsic to the I? Very, very important question. So, if people say, no, sadness and me are one and the same, I am completely enmeshed with my sadness and I am sorrow. It's like opposite of a Mahavakya. Alpavakya. Alpavakya means a Vakya that expresses one's smallness. Opposite of Mahavakya, which expresses one's limitlessness. So this Alpavakya, Aham sorrow. See, Sanskrit is so easy. Okay, see, I'm promoting my Sanskrit class starting next weekend. Okay, so Sanskrit is so easy. You just say Aham, I. Aham sorrow. So there is an equation between the Aham and the sorrow, just like there is an equation between Tattvam Asi, Tat and then Tvam. You are that Jagat Karanam Brahma. You are that which is glowing Bhagavan, resting in one's own glory. You are that. Compare, that is called Mahavakya, which talks about the equation, the identity between this sad, mad, bad jiva with Ishvara Bhagavan. And this is what opposite of Mahavakya, Hina Vakya, a kind of a helpless, Dina Vakya, a helpless Vakya, a Vakya that is inferior, Alpa Vakya, a Vakya that is a sentence that is expressing one's, one's Alpatvam. Alpa means what? Smallness. An expression that is fomenting and forging an identity between oneself and that sorrow. Aham sorrow. Aham sorrow means what? I am sorrow. So that means the sorrow is intrinsic to the I. The question is this: what happens when you go to sleep? Either in the Vedanta class or outside the Vedanta class. Both possibilities are there, because the tune of the Bhagavad Gita is very relaxing for the tortured samsaric soul. Okay, yeah. So then what happens when you go to sleep? When you wake up from the sleep, do you have to wring out your pillowcase because you have wept uncontrollably in the night? No. In sleep, there is uparama, a cessation of all sorrow. And it's not that the neighbor went to sleep and you woke up, it's your own sleep. Your own sleep. Because when you wake up, you say, "Oh, I slept so well, I even forgot to be sad." What happened? What happened to me? And me is equal to sadness. We are best buddies, BFF, best friends forever. In fact, we are one and the same. And how did this one and the same? How come you had a viyoga, a separation from sorrow in sleep? Oh, that was sleep. Because everything, there is a cessation of everything there, except breathing. Everything, everything has a cessation. Don't bring the sleep. All right. During the waking state also, it's not that the person who says, I am aham sorrow, the person is not sad all the time. In between, beach mein, translation, okay, yeah. So in between, there is a, there is a resurgence of some joy, some peace, some contentment, some sense of feeling, as they say, as people are fond of saying, more like oneself. You don't have to, there is, some people say, as long as the desires are fulfilled, one is happy. No, even the time between the fulfillment of one desire and the rising of another desire, one can be happy. And then, all it needs, as Pujya Swamiji would say, is a small joke. You hear the joke, and even when you're very sad, you can just laugh. And of course, Pujya Swamiji had the ability to make people laugh even without a joke. How? Because he would tell this, he would narrate this incident. He would say that a person came to him 1 week after a class was delivered, a Gita class, and said, Swamiji, that joke that you made a week ago, I was standing, I didn't understand it at that time. Then, just this morning, I was standing under the shower. Why shower? Because the hot water, stimulates the brain cells underneath. And then I was standing under the shower and I said, ha, I got the joke. And I was so happy to get the joke because I told that, you told the joke, everybody laughed. I was the only one who was sitting in the class not laughing, and I was feeling very bad. Then today morning I thought of that, what that joke could be. And then standing under the shower I got it and I laughed. And Swamiji asked, okay, what was that joke? What did you understand? And he told what he understood, and then Swamiji laughed. Okay, so now there are 3 laughters for the joke, which we don't even know, which we don't even know still till today what that joke was. And so, like this, what happens? It seems like there are, even in the rain-drenched sorrow that appears to be intrinsic to the eye, the sun does shine. The flowers do bloom. The birds do chirp. Spring springs. And then, of course, the weather of England, all that, everything starts coming again. Like English weather. It seems to crowd out all this, and then the skies are grey again. But even that little glimmer, that small crocus blooming in the snow in the winter, towards the end of the winter, and then the sun shining, the dew, the birds show, where is all this happening? Right here. So, shows if the weather can change, even for a second, there is a question whether I am really sad or not, whether the sadness is intrinsic to the eye or not, there is a question. That's why the example based on the weather. That is why it is called weather. So, This is something, so this can be easily dismissed. The sorrow is not intrinsic to the I for two reasons. One is, in sleep you are not sad, and even in the waking state, even the saddest person is not sad all the time. And the third and the most compelling reason is that I reject the sorrow. Do you want to be sad? No. And the second question is moot. How long would you like to be sad? It doesn't apply at all in this case. One rejects the definition of aham sorrow, this alpa, this alpa vakya, this hina vakya is rejected. And even though one doesn't know how to even say the word mahavakya, one still goes for that. One likes to see oneself in the best light possible. One does not want to see oneself as sad at all, even a little bit. And like I mentioned before, even the pharmaceutical companies know this. They know that your nature is not to be sad. That's why antidepressants. Your nature is not to be anxious or fearful. That's why anti-anxiety medicines. And so therefore, the sorrow is not intrinsic to the I. You don't even need Vedanta for this. You just need to sit and reason, and you can come to this yourself. You reject the sorrow, and you are still, even despite of moments of sorrow, you are able to smile, you are able to eat, you are able to enjoy certain things in life. That means the sorrow has nothing to do with the I. Then we have to see, okay, the sorrow must be in the air, extrinsic to me. Catching sorrow is like catching COVID. It is around. Physical distancing, masking, vaccination. So we have to find the counterparts for this, so because the sorrow, like COVID, is catching. Is this true? Well, yeah, it is true, because I was fine until I hung out with you. And you had a long face, and in this long face, I was sitting next to this long face. You had a face like a cucumber, very long, and then, and then my face also became like a cucumber sitting next to you. The sorrow was absorbed by osmosis. Okay, all right, let us entertain that for a while. And then, so what are you going to do as a result? Avoid all sad people. Okay, you can avoid all sad people, but how do you know that they are sad or not until you hang out with them? In fact, when you ask them first, how are you? What are people going to say? Fine, wonderful, no problem. So you go out for the first coffee with them, everything is wonderful. That's why you set up another coffee with them. Coffee means time to spend together. And the second coffee also fine. Third coffee also fine. And then later on, when they feel safe, all their sorrow comes out. How you can't run, it would be impolite. Now you have started to like this person. How are you going to stop this? How are you going to avoid sorrow? It's like that boy who had to live in a bubble. He was born terribly immunocompromised. Even his own parents could not hug him, forget holding him, forget touching him. Could not do anything. He had to spend his whole life in a bubble, and I think he passed away early. But so it's impossible to say I can insulate myself from sorrow by avoiding everything in the world that causes sorrow. Or so, like, no more sad movies, no more sad songs, no more satsangs. Why? Because those are also sad. That's why it's called sad sang. You sat and you sang sad songs. Okay? Darshan kab doge? When will you give me darshan? Don't play hide and seek, oh Lord. These are all sad, sad people singing sad songs. So that also you avoid. Then what? Then what? You say, okay, I'm going to repair to the forest. And this is what Arjuna is getting ready to do anyway. Arjuna wants to go to the to Rishikesh and then sit under a tree, grow a beard because he'd rather people not recognize him, and then grow a beard and then sit there. Do you think Arjuna's sorrow will stop? Everybody will say no. Why? Because there is an expression in English which gives the reason why. Wherever you go, there you are. You take yourself with you. And so, your perception of the Jagat, you can leave everything behind. But you cannot ever leave your perception of the world behind until and unless you study the Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, Upanishads, everything. That is the only thing that helps. And so the world, really speaking, is not the cause of sorrow. Why? Because one person's sorrow is another person's joy. One person wanted to sell a car, right? And then another person wanted to buy a car. Well, there was only one problem. The car was really better. The car was better called bekar. Bekar in Hindi means useless. Okay, so it was not a car. It was bekar. But the buyer did not know, and the seller sold the car. And the buyer bought one, as they say in English, bought one big yellow lemon, okay, instead of the car. And so what? So one person wanted to get rid of the car, another person wanted to acquire the car. The person who acquired the car is sad, and then that same car becomes the center of sadness. And then the same car for the seller becomes the center of joy. The person is just, what should I say, feeling wonderful. I disposed of this car. Why? Because that person who sold the car doesn't know of one more car. What is that car? Karma. Oh, but I thought it is pronounced karma. Yes, except when the karma has to do with the car. Then you can say karma. Okay, so this person doesn't know one more car is waiting later on to fructify for this particular deceit. That's why in the interim the person is happy. So the same thing evokes various kinds of emotions within people. And the Panchadashi gives a beautiful example of this in the chapter on Jiva Srishti and Ishvara Srishti. Jiva's creation is the Jagat, and the world is the world is Ishvara's creation. And then what? The perception of the world is Jiva's creation, the individual's creation. There is an overlay of subjectivity. And the example that Swami Vidyaranya gives in the Panchadashi is beautiful. It's an example from ancient India where there would be 10-carat diamonds on the roadside. Somebody dropped, maybe a robber, who was making off with his loot, dropped a 10-carat diamond in the middle of the road. Two people from the opposite sides were waiting to just come and grab this. Person A and person B. Person A dashed and went towards the gem, but person B was faster. Then what happened? Person B got the gem. Aha! And on insult on top of injury, the injury of not getting the gem was already there with person A, and person B said, "Slow coach, you can't even move." Take some running lessons, go jogging, better luck next time. Rubbed it in the face, and look, such a nice gem, see. and then there was, of course, being ancient India, there was always a sadhu on the road, okay? Because where else will the sadhus go? They'll be roaming on the road. And so the sadhu roaming on the road was watching the two of them. So the first one, manim prapya hrishyati. So the first one gaining the gem was just overjoyed, ecstatic, jumping around, playing catch with the gem, not throwing it too far, okay? Yeah, because somebody else may catch it. So just a little bit, just to show, this is just jumping in my hands. And the other one was bereft of the gem, which really did not belong to him or her in the first place, but person A was in tears. So, having lost the gem, having been outrun, that person is crying. You see, the same gem evokes sorrow on the part of one and happiness on the part of the other. And that's why the third person is there in the scenario, the sadhu, who is neutral towards the gem and towards the happiness experienced by one and the sorrow experienced by the other. Why is this so? Because the sadhu has knowledge of the self, and the knowledge of the self says that self-knowledge is nothing but understanding that there is nothing in this universe that can make me happy, and by contrast, make me sad. There's nothing in this universe. Why? Because the universe is just benign, one's own. So therefore we are talking about one's own subjective overlay, one's own perceptions that make one sad. Oh, but you just said sorrow is not intrinsic to the self. I still maintain that sorrow is not intrinsic to the self, because if sorrow is intrinsic to the self, it cannot be removed, full stop. Then we will all congratulate each other when something sad happens. Oh, 3 sad things happened in your life? Wonderful. You really deserve it. Because swabhavasya na nivrittihi. What is your swabhava cannot be removed. And then, if sorrow is extrinsic to the self, it cannot be avoided, because wherever you go, you can become sad. That is not the case. Because the same thing today can invoke joy, and then a few minutes later can invoke sorrow. Like what? Like the 10th cone of ice cream. Okay. So, first cone, wonderful. Second cone, very nice. Third cone, I think I should stop eating. And fourth, fifth, sixth, then why did they continue eating? They continued to eat because it was an ice cream eating competition and they wanted to win. What is the prize? A lifetime supply of ice cream. That's the prize. Okay. So they wanted to eat. So then by the time they came to the 10th cone, they just looked around. No other survivors were there. And already the person, the person wanted to visit the bathroom 5 ice creams ago, but somehow was just, displaying great self-control and sitting there with great difficulty, and then looks around, everybody else is just down, down with lactose intolerance, down and out, and then he knows or she knows that this 10th ice cream cone need not be eaten. I am the winner. Okay. So then, and there is so much disgust. Even the person who wants a lifetime supply of ice cream is disgusted after a certain while. There is a surfeit, and one is disgusted with the very object of love. So that shows that the heart is so finicky. First, I love you, and then I allow you to go. I think we need space. We need to spend time apart. And we have heard that it's very healthy to spend time apart. I think I should move to a different continent. Okay, this is exactly the situation. So if the sorrow is extrinsic to the self, it cannot be avoided. If sorrow is intrinsic to the I, it cannot be removed. And also if the sorrow is and then if you say no, the sorrow is not there at all. If the sorrow is not there at all, why do you weep? And if the sorrow is not there at all, then why are we studying the Bhagavad Gita? because the Bhagavad Gita is not to put on your resume. I am in the 11th verse of the second chapter. Up till then, I have had a thorough study of Bhagavad Gita. That is one way to not get a job, okay? Yeah. So, it is not to put on your resume, and it is not to, it is of no use otherwise. And it's of no use personally also if you say that, sorrow is intrinsic to the I. It cannot be intrinsic to the I. Otherwise, you would not try to remove it. And if you say there is no sorrow, then there is no need to remove it. In either case, the study of the Bhagavad Gita, the existence of the Upanishads, all go to waste. And so, therefore, what? Sorrow is an impostor, we can say. It's an impostor, and it seems to have a connection with my own perception. I can think myself to be sad based on what this kind of thinking is. So the perception, and this is what the highly regarded study of Vedanta in the text called Panchadashi talks about. This is what is unfolded. That there is Ishvara Srishti, Ishvara's projection in the form of this Jagat is very much there. It is undeniable. You cannot wish it away. You cannot will it away. It is here for everyone to see. It is here. It is here, therefore I see it. But then the next question, how do you see it? That is very, very important. So, the way in which one sees the universe is an overlay of what one calls the unconscious mind, filled with prejudices, preferences. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we can look forward to these terms called Raga, Dvesha. So the Raga, Dvesha is the paint with which I conjure a separate parallel reality. I draw a parallel universe inside Ishvara's universe, which distorts my own perception and causes me to have sorrow. And this is exactly why Lord Krishna says, this sorrow is not warranted. It's not warranted. It's not doing you a service. It's not contributing anything to your life. In fact, it is taking away from who you are. It is making it more difficult to be the self that you want to be and to be the self that you know yourself to be. That which is content, that which is non-demanding, that which is free. Instead, one is confronted with a self that is dysfunctionally connected to the universe and to the people in it by way of obligations, like Arjuna, by way of some kind of dysfunctional, we can't even call it attachment, enmeshment. Dysfunctional enmeshment, including trauma bonding, which we talked about last time, which Arjuna has a case of trauma bonding, Stockholm syndrome. All these things are part of this, the picture of the jiva trying to shore up a certain kind of a security from the world, from the very world which is incapable of giving the jiva a security. Why? Because anything that you bond with in the universe, be it a person, place, event, etc., or a circumstance, it is finite. And what do you want? You want the bonding to be infinite. You want to be connected infinitely. You want to have this thing forever. In fact, it is you who want to be forever. But the desire to be forever, which is a siddha vishaya, not a sadhya vishaya. Siddha vishaya means it's an already accomplished fact. Sadhya vishaya, it is something to be accomplished. No. It is not something to be accomplished. You are already free. You are already the most secure thing there is. There is nothing like you. You are just, I can't even say you are one of a kind. You are the only thing, the only self effulgent, self evident I that there is. There is nothing like you, there is nothing unlike you, there is nothing other than you. So therefore there is no cause for sorrow. Still, if sorrow is there, it is because the universe is seen as a place to look for that, to look for that infinitude that one is seeking, that one already is, but separated by ignorance, by one's own ignorance. So the ignorance is the capital upon which there are some investments and gains. So what are the gains? The gain is insecurity. The offshoot of ignorance is insecurity. And because of the insecurity, there is all kinds of wrong notions centered on the I that are internalized. I am no good, I am unloved, I am unwanted, I am an idiot, I am insignificant, I am small, I don't matter. And then because of all this, then there is a frenetic effort to suppress that pain, to try to make oneself secure by unleashing a series of accomplishments. I want to have this, I want to have that, I want to do this, I want to do that, and maybe this will make me feel better, this will make me more accomplished, at least the people around me will not say anything more about me. I should, amass some riches so I can sleep at night. Bad idea, because once you amass the riches, you're rest assured you will have difficulty sleeping at night. And so it's not going to make any difference. Better to take some sleeping pills or herbs, okay? Yeah, that is a safer way to have a full night's sleep. So all these, ways of trying to accomplish things, the frenzied realm of activity, which is the definition of the very jiva, jivahood, jiva-ness, is all useless. Why? Because it just brings more headache, more insecurity. The insecurity begets further insecurity. And then what happens? As a result, the person is just in an endless loop of karma, actions to make myself secure, and then results of action. What is the result of action? More insecurity, more actions, and then more trials and more errors. And this is that loop in which the jiva is on a permanent spin cycle of a broken down washing machine. Yeah, all washed out, all the buttons all worn out, and the color all, bleached out. The person is exhausted and being wrung out in a permanent spin cycle of karma and karma phala. All because of the misperception. And the cause of the misperception is Atma Ajnanam. Centered on the self is the ignorance of the very I. The I is not known as Ishvara, as the very cause of the universe. And until that knowledge takes place, the spin cycle cannot be put to a stop. So this is how the whole thing starts, because of Atma Ajnanam. We can't ask the question, when did Atma Ajnanam start? It did not start, it was already there. Why? Because the jiva has no beginning. And since the Ajnanam is connected to the jiva, the Ajnanam also has no beginning. Oh no! What to do now? That means it has no end. Yes, it has no beginning, but it has an end. How can that be? How can it be that it has a beginning, it has no beginning but an end? Thank God. Thank God it has an end. But no, I like everything to fall in place. It should have a beginning and it should have an end. Well, if Ajnanam had a beginning and Ajnanam is opposite of Jnanam, knowledge, then we are in a very interesting conundrum. What is that? Okay, so before Ajnanam started, what was there? You are forced to say jnanam, knowledge was there before ignorance started. This is the scenario if ignorance were to have a beginning. Before ignorance began, knowledge was there. And then what? The knowledge got displaced by ignorance. So sad. And then what are you doing now? I'm studying the Bhagavad Gita. Why? So I can displace the ignorance by knowledge. Nobody will log on. Why? Because people are clever. People will say, in the beginning, when that ignorance was, when that knowledge was displaced by ignorance, if that was the case, what is the guarantee that when I gain moksha, when I gain the understanding that I am free, I am whole, again the ajnanam will not come back like a bad dream. Ajnana will not haunt you and say, I am back. Along with the sorrow, along with all the things you don't want. Oh, but I studied for 12 years Vedanta. Too bad, not my problem. So, this cannot happen. That is why in the setup, thankfully, Ajnanam doesn't have a beginning. Jnanam also doesn't have a beginning. So the Ajnanam is an imposter. In fact, there is only Jnanam. From the standpoint of the individual body, mind, sense complex, the one who says, I don't know the truth of myself, I need some remedy, is told to go to a teacher and study the Gita, study the Upanishad. And so therefore what? So therefore, this is something we have to really, really see, that the sorrow is neither extrinsic to oneself, the sorrow is neither intrinsic to oneself, nor extrinsic to oneself. And so therefore what? The sorrow is an impostor that comes because of a subjective overlay of my own perception over the Jagat, and this sorrow therefore is eminently dismissible. That is why the holiest of teachings starts with a negative participle, nanj. Nanj is the negative participle. So where is the negative participle? In the word ashocyan. Shoka, sorrow. Shochyah means that which is worthy of sorrow. Ashochyah, that which is absolutely not deserving of sorrow. So the teaching begins with the word a negative particle. This is a no-no in Vedanta writing or in any kind of writing. You don't bring in negative, this is, what should I say, this is Shruti giving some creative writing tips. Okay, so don't begin with negative things. In fact, even when the Swamis are named, we try not to give negative names. You don't do that. Like Nirmalananda, maybe in other lineages, but in our lineage we never give a name Nirmalananda. Nirmala means not dirty Ananda. What a name for the poor Swami to live with lifelong. Not dirty I am, not dirty I am. Better to say Shuddhananda, already pure Ananda, much better. Same meaning. Not impure Ananda. That is not going to, the person who is being named is starting a new life with a new identity, and the new name should be in keeping with the vision of the Shastra and the Atma. What is this Atma? The only exception is Advayananda. That is okay. Advaya is not negative here, it's a fact. Non-dual. So, because duality is the problem. So, non-dual Ananda, okay. But other than that, and one more example, Aparokshananda. So, Paroksha being remote, Aparoksha, self-evident right there. So, those two are the exceptions. But otherwise, you don't give negative names, whether to Swamis or to even babies. You don't give negative names. You give the same quality positive names because you want them to lead their lives from a place of affirmation, not denial. But yet the holiest of the Shastras begins with the negative participle This is the second objection. Why did Bhagavan start with a? Why did Bhagavan start the most positive Shastra with the most positive outlook with a negative participle? Well, that too is valid. Why is that valid? Because the negative particle is very important here, because the Shastra is not based on pravritti. Pravritti means pursuits that I embody. Pursuits such as money, fame, relationships, job, career, children, and other such pursuits. This, as we have seen in the introduction, this is called pravritti based pursuits. Pravritti means I pursue this with my own effort. I pursue this. This is what the first portion of the Veda, all the Vedas, the first portion of the Veda is all about pravritti. I want money. Okay, do Lakshmi Puja. I want no obstacles to be there. Okay, let me show you how to do Ganesha, Ganesha Homa, Ganesha Yajna. I want a better job. All right, so one more, some other homa. I want progeny. Putra Kameshti Yajna. Havan. And then I want this or I don't want that. All this is pravritti based. The first portion of the Veda keeps the jiva going while making the jiva grow in terms of dharma, in terms of following dharma, a dharmic life, and in terms of also emotional growth. So that one is sick of keeping on asking for things in life, and one hopefully graduates to interrogate the one who is the asker. The wanting person, the desiring person should be interrogated. And so enter Vedanta, the slim paperback which is called Vedanta, also called Upanishad. The first portion of the pravritti based pursuits addressed by the Shastra is what? Is huge, whole, big. And the second Vedanta is very small. Why? Because it is nivritti based. Everything that one pursued, one unlearns here. It is based on freedom from seeking. Whereas the first portion of the Veda signifies freedom of seeking. Here it is freedom from seeking. And whereas the first portion of the Veda tries to protect your relationships, and you want to do that through this puja, and that one you want to have domestic harmony. And then, freedom to have relationships, freedom to relate, freedom to be in relationship. And then the second portion of the Veda is freedom in relationship. So that one is free to relate, and one is not dependent on trying to protect any particular relationship. The first portion of Veda is about trying to stop the insecurity and the pain from surfacing itself by amassing people, wealth, etc. The second portion of the Veda is to understand that you don't need all this amassing. In fact, all this amassing, leads to further insecurity and sorrow. So this nivritti based Shastra is all about the removal of ajnanam, and therefore it is eminently valid for Bhagavan to begin the nivritti based Shastra with the words Ashocyan. That which does not, see the word not comes, that which does not deserve grief. Because this, the gain of self-knowledge is 9/10 nivritti, 9/10 removal of ignorance. because the knowledge is already you. It shines brightly, it is glorious, it is nothing but you. 9/10 of it is removal of ajnanam, 1/10 of it is affirming the knowledge. And so it is absolutely valid for Bhagavan and very effective and a beautiful way to begin the teaching. Ashocyan anvashochastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase. You talk like a pandit without being a pandit, because the hallmark of a pandit is to not grieve over things that are yet to die and not grieve over things that are already gone. Why? Because that grief is invalid. Now you see why it is invalid. Because it is neither centered on you nor centered on the world, and you're entertaining an impostor and giving it, inviting it into your heart, making space for it to sit, and then giving it tea and food, and you are nurturing it with your ragadveshas, with the vital vitals of your ragadveshas, and it makes itself comfortable and brings in the suitcase and its offspring also. And so therefore the negative shastra, that which removes all this, ashocyan anvashochastvam, very very valid. And having got rid of the objections, and the next class we will plunge into the further into the bhashya and other things, and go further with this, with the second chapter. Here there is a question: will individuals have an individual svabhava? Will Praveena have her own individuality apart from Tat? Sure. Yeah. That is not called svabhava. It is, you can call it svabhava, but really it is, we'll put it in English. So the Tat is person, you are that person, and then the individuality is the personality. Just like the ality is the suffix to the person, so too all your likes and dislikes are suffixes to you. And the suffix, when you take away the suffix, nothing happens to the person. It neither adds to the person nor subtracts from the person. That is why the suffix can be, a vibhuti in the case of a jnani. Like Lord Krishna. We love that he has the headgear of that, what is that called? The peacock, feather of the peacock. We love that he has a flute at his lips. We love that he is wearing yellow clothes, which go very well with the blue that he is. Okay, that's all studied. Okay, yeah. So then blue and yellow, very nicely, the particular tones match very well. So we love all that. And we say, oh, Krishna likes butter, Krishna likes yellow. So Krishna may like yellow, but in fact we love the yellow more than Krishna. Because if you dress Krishna in any other color, he is not going to complain. So that is the difference. So the raga and the dvesha, the likes and dislikes are, one gets to the place where they are expendable, where they become part of your own glory, and they are not a non-removable ality. So the ality must always be a place of sport and be a place of where you can just play. And if the ality goes and gloms on to the person, that is when we unleash the Bhagavad Gita. We remember everything we have studied, and so the ality must always be a dispensable suffix. The focus is on I, the person. And that glory is enough. You don't need the ality, but you can have it if you like, and you can revel in it as long as you know who the person is. Okay, yeah. And then before the closing prayer, one more announcement. There is a Sanskrit class starting this weekend. Okay, so somebody can share that flyer, please. Yeah, somebody, anybody. Yeah, so I don't know where I have put it, so please help me and share that flyer. So it is Pacific time, 7:30 to 8:30, same Zoom room. And then what other time? East Coast time, 10:30 to 11:30. So beginning Sanskrit for those who know the alphabet already. Okay, so you're welcome to join. Can somebody just share that flyer? Thank you so much, Shraddha. Wonderful. So you can download that, it's in the chat pod. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you very much. Om.